Hello everyone, this one's gonna be a bit strange. I'm trying to start like a new mini-series where I just kind of don't script things and all that, but I asked this in a poll and you seem to want me to talk about it, and there was this Nomura interview a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago at this point. I've been a bit busy with other things, about the future of the series and, you know, Final Fantasy and its place in the series. And I'll be frank and just cut to the chase here. I really don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I understand where he's coming from. I've read the article and he says that, you know, as the series has gone on, they've been phased out because initially there was a point to them. They were trying to help Sora, Riku, and Kairi blend into the franchise, and I understand where he's coming from, and I understand why fans are upset by this retcon, but he's not entirely wrong, because the whole point of like Cloud and Aerith and Leon and all of them, it was more to kind of explain the rules of the series in one, and then in two, and actually in both of them, they're relegated to basically just Traverse Town and Radiant Garden, and yeah, they technically help in the Tron world. They don't really do anything. They're just kind of there. They give exposition, they give Sora the membership card, and then he fucks off. I don't really care about them because while they're cool, they don't really make me have an initial reaction beyond, oh cool, there are other anime characters here, what are they doing? And then it's just like, oh, okay, this is what they do. And then they kind of fuck off, and I don't really have a reason to care. You know, the point of them being introduced, I understand. And as far as I'm aware, the series has always been marketed more about the Disney stuff. It doesn't really need the Final Fantasy cameos. They're just there because they make sense for the aesthetic clashing. I remember Bloody Biscuits, when he did his Birth by Sleep video, like, you know, the Turning Point one, that big one, he showed this clip of the completionist doing Birth by Sleep, and, you know, it was this thing of like, you know, all your favorite things are here, Disney characters, Final Fantasy cameos, and it's like, and he got mad at that, and I'm like, I mean, it's not wrong. The only person in the game that's Final Fantasy is Zack, and he's a bit of a perv. Like, I really don't care about Zack at all. I asked on Twitter what was so endearing about Zack, and because I've only ever experienced him through the lens of the Olympus world, so I don't have the context to really get him. And people were like, oh, well, you should get the Crisis Core remake coming out this Christmas. I'm like, you know what? I will. So I went and pre-ordered that. So I'm getting the context for that, and having played 7's remake, I do have context for Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, Barrett, who oddly enough never showed up in the series. I don't know why. I don't know where Sid comes into this. I think he's past wherever the fuck the first disc of 7 takes place. I don't know what it's called. I cannot remember what the fuck it's called. Isn't it like I can't remember. I really can't remember. Anyway, I think this Sid is from 7 as well. They really pulled from 7 because it was the most popular at the time, but it still reigns supreme as many people's favorite Final Fantasy game. I personally like 15. I do like 7 because of the remake, but I never played the original, so I have no idea how that translates over. But, you know, I like 15 a lot because it's my favorite of the group. I even like Shadow of Paradise from what I played of it. It was really fun. I understand the outrage of this. I really, 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 really get it. I understand why it's a problem. I understand why people are not excited about it, but I don't really have a problem with it because, like I said earlier, they don't really add anything. They just kind of exist and are there for the sake of making everyone else that isn't a Disney character look normal. Like, even in 2, having Merlin stand next to Leon is a bit bizarre because the two of them don't truly interact. They just kind of exist, and it's a clashing art design. This is why I was much more a fan of The World Ends With You crew in Dream Drop Distance, because they're just stylized enough to not be distracting, and they fit much more naturally with Sora and Riku and all the other main characters' designs, even though they aren't made by Nomura, because The World Ends With You was made well after the era of Final Fantasy that this series likes to take place from. If Final Fantasy was such a crucial part, why have we never had a Final Fantasy world? Why have we only ever had one singular Final Fantasy party member in Olympus in Kingdom Hearts 2? Why is it from Final Fantasy X of all things? Why haven't we gotten anyone else as a party member? We fight alongside them in the raid on Hollow Bastion, but that's a scripted encounter where they're not even party members. You can't do attacks with them, you can't link up, you can't do reaction commands, you can't do anything with them. They are simply just doing their boss fight animations on Heartless, and that's it. And that's just not what I want from these characters. If we're gonna have them, make them more integrated. If you're not gonna do that, then fuck off with them. I don't care about them. I care about the Disney characters. I care about the original characters. I care about the plot going on in these games that revolves around this shit. There's a reason I like 3's Worlds a lot more than I like 2's, because 3's Worlds has the organization come in and deal with the conflict organically. Marluxia, Larxene, even Vanitas are all somewhat directly involved with their world's plots, whereas with 2, they don't really come up until the middle of the game. So yeah, it's good for red herring stuff, but it doesn't really help when we're not bothering to care with it. And for the Final Fantasy aspect of that, the only character we get outside of Radiant Garden is Auron, and I don't fucking like Auron. I never have. He's just an asshole. And I get it. Again, I haven't played 10. I haven't played anything Final Fantasy besides Shadow of Paradise 15 and 7's remake. So I'm lacking context for these characters. I'm aware of that, but the series should have to make me care about these characters to begin with. I don't like the Sword in the Stone, but I love Merlin in this. I don't like Snow White, Aurora, or Peter Pan, but the series makes me care about them a lot. I know those are random, but I couldn't say Cinderella because I love Cinderella as a movie and a character. I don't have, like, the series makes me care about these characters because of the time we spend with them. I like what the movies translated to the games do. There's not a world dedicated to the Final Fantasy characters, so they don't really get time to shine. They just take up screen time. Maybe if in Quadratum they were there, I could understand that, but I doubt it with how Nomura has been phrasing this. And this leads me to something else. Like if I got to pick how to do this, you know, I think the series should take another 5 years, maybe 6 years to make the next game, and, you know, have 14, 15 worlds of varying sizes and doing different things, and then have a Final Fantasy character, the protagonist typically of each of those games, or a noteworthy character, because I think the first 3 or 4 are pretty much player inserted characters. They didn't start doing like actual characters till like 5 or 6. Have every world be in there. You could probably nix 14 because 14 is definitely also a player character thing, and you could replace them with, I don't know, the main character from Shadow of Paradise, and I'd be completely fine with that. But anyway, so like you have like 15 Disney worlds, and then you have like one protagonist or one character from every game of the Final Fantasy genre, and you have to defeat them in a battle. That way, you know, Sora tests his strength, and then you get a Keyblade just like literally called Final Fantasy or whatever, and it's like a combination of like the Buster Sword and Lightning Spear and all that shit, and it unlocks like a Bahamut or something, a really big fuck off cinematic encounter boss that's like super hard. Like you have to get the reaction commands just right, and you can't fuck it up. You'll get like a Spider-Man, or you'll get like a Spider-Man-esque quick time event fail screen, and those are always funny. I think that if we're gonna start having more Final Fantasy representation, we have to move past 10. We haven't had anyone, and I mean fucking anyone, outside of 10. Like the furthest we've gone is I think maybe 11. And I'm guessing that entirely with the Gull Wings. I don't know what game they're from. I think they're 10, they might be 9, they might be 12. I don't know. But, you know, let's go to 15, let's go to 13. People love Lightning. They love Lightning. People love Noctis and his crew. Like, you have an entire gang of people gift wrapped for you to work with. And for some reason, they don't want to do it. Like, I know that Nomura has bad blood with 15 because it got usurped from him, and it's kind of a shitty thing that happens. I really understand that. But the concept alone is so good to work with, and you could even do meta jokes with how Noctis looks like Yozora. There's just too much potential for me not to want this. You know, have Gladion be someone that trains your weapons, and he makes you like you do fights with him, and he unlocks, you can do the Keyblade upgrade system through him. Prompto wants pictures, so you go take pictures of enemies and landscapes and all of that, replacing the Moogle thing from the last game. Ignis replaces Little Chef. I think that would be a really cool idea, because then it allows us to have a character that is characterized through more than just, oh look, it's a Disney character doing this shit. Now we actually make recipes with him, and like, because he's blind and all that shit, it would make the reason he needs us to get this stuff be more inclined. I understand that in the game he gets past his blindness, but that would still be a cool idea and a really interesting way to do this. And then once you've, I don't want to say done all their stuff, but like gotten a majority of it done, you get the ability to fight Noctis with all his different weapons, his different combos, his teleporting, because Yozora does that as well, but Yozora has a very set pattern. With Noctis, there's like, I think 20 weapons in the game. Have him cycle through 10 of them. Have one of each type, a broadsword, a normal sword, quick blades, a bare knuckle boxing thing. There's so many ways you could do Noctis, and it would be such a creative and fun encounter that it would require a game's worth of build-up, and I think that'd be so fun. It's just that the series doesn't utilize Final Fantasy because they were never meant to be this big fuck off cool thing. They were meant to be this visual cohesion between the new characters and the old characters. And I know that sucks, and I feel really terrible for people who grew up with this series. I was only into this in 2017 and onward, so it's been 5 years for me, and I get it. It sucks. You really like these characters and you want to see them do more because you've grown up with them. But I personally don't see the appeal because the way the series treats them. So again, I understand why people are upset, but I personally find it a bit of an overreaction is the best way I could put it, because people were mad at 3 for not having them, even though 3 already had enough content, enough characters, enough things going on, that adding Final Fantasy, I said this when I made my Legacy of KH3 video, having the Final Fantasy there really wouldn't have added anything to the game, because the game was already long enough and already had enough of a story that it didn't need these characters. They're in the Limit Cut episode specifically just for fan pandering. That's it. All the Limit Cut and Remind do, besides further the plot, is pander to fans. I love the Limit Cut episode. I love it's adding things. I love the entirety of the Remind DLC. But when you get down to it, it's pandering for the sake of it. You can play as Roxas, you can play as Aqua, you can play as Kairi, you can do the data fights again, the Final Fantasy characters all get like one line apiece, and those things are cool, don't get me wrong. I love playing as Roxas, I love playing as Aqua again, I love playing as Riku, I love playing as Kairi. Like, that's cool, I understand that, but it's so obviously added for the sake of it, because Aqua and Riku are just their base game selves with higher defense and attack stats and maybe like one extra potion, but Roxas and Kairi are designed around their game counterparts before they were even able to be playable. And the problem is that with, Roxas, you kind of had to make him OP because this was his triumphant return and whatever, but I will still stand by this, that Kairi's power up and teleporting and her animations does not make sense for where she is in the game. It doesn't flow naturally. I'm so consistently confused on this. I don't know why this happened, other than fans wanted it, so they put it in. And I understand not wanting to alienate your audience, but they made a very clear and deliberate choice not to have Final Fantasy in 3, and I think 3's narrative is stronger from it because it's very streamlined in a way that makes sense. Would I have liked to see Zack in Olympus, dead from all his fighting? Sure. What I have liked is a Sephiroth fight up in the God's Circle thing where Zeus is just standing there being a nothing. Sure, I would have been fine with that, but they weren't needed. And 3 already had a rushed development cycle as it was, so cutting in a superfluous element like the Final Fantasy characters, to me at least, makes some kind of sense. And the fact that they added them to Remind while pandering and not my favorite thing, kind of makes sense, because they had ample time and they didn't really announce Remind until it was well in its development to even incorporate those characters in a way that makes sense. So for all my posturing on this as best I can make it, I understand the outrage at the initial claim, but at the same time I also don't, because I come to this series for the main characters first. If I wanted Final Fantasy characters, I would go play their respective games. I can do so whenever I want. I have a Switch, I have a PC, I have a PS5. I don't need this series to give me a Final Fantasy fix when I can go everywhere else for it. This series is a Disney anime crossover. That's the whole idea. Actually, it's just really a Disney crossover with the main character being an anime-looking kid because it's Japan. I like these characters. I want to explore these characters. We've outgrown the need for other people that look like them to make this worth a damn anymore. Yes, boss fights would have been cool. Yeah, a cameo here and there, especially in Radiant Garden, that might have helped a little bit, but I'm not super bummed out by it. Especially with Streliza coming back in Quadratum, and all the other characters, and the Stargirl, and Yozora and his crew coming into 4, I'm really not upset that we're kind of ditching them in favor of this. I would like to see the world ends with U Crew because I grew to care for them because they were so important to Traverse Town's plot in DDD, but if I don't ever see them again, I'll be bummed. But there are 2 full games based on those characters that I can go play. I own one of them. Actually, I own both of them. I can go see them whenever I want. I can go catch up with them whenever I want. This series is about Sora, Riku, Kairi, Axel, Gion, Roxas, Terra Ventus Aqua, and Naminé, along with the iterations of the Disney characters. We don't need any other iterations of characters that aren't going to impact the plot. It's just not worth it. And especially with how the fans react to this stuff and how much they bay at the moon about when they don't incorporate things correctly or they don't capitalize on an idea. If 3 taught them anything, it's better to just give them it's better to just jingle the keys in front of their face than anything else. Because when I played Remind for the first time, I was like, oh, that's all they do? That seems shit. And then I was done. I just didn't care. So, yeah, I'm sorry if that's not what you wanted me to say. I'm sorry that I'm not super bummed out about this, but that's my honest take on this. I don't see the reason for the outrage about it. I hope you enjoyed this. If not, I'm sorry. But in any case, my name is Chris. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do what you do, and I hope you have a fractastic day.